Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And today, I want to remind us to do our acts of kindness. And we've got about another week to be kind to people. Let's do it. Today I want to talk about jaywalking through emotions. And for those of you in the sobriety program, may be familiar with the story in the big book about jaywalking. So I'm going to talk about how this jaywalking struck me the other day. As in the big book, it compares jaywalking to alcoholism and drinking. And I want to bring in the emotional side of jaywalking. So I'll be talking about emotional jaywalking. So I want to talk about the parallels between jaywalking and how we react to things in our lives and how we may be able to do things in a little more healthy way without feeling like we have to practice the steps and make amends to people later. So this comparison to jaywalking in the big book is in chapter 3. And I'll just kick things off by revisiting so that those of you who are not aware of the story, it describes a person who repeatedly dashes out in busy streets to experience the thrill of jaywalking and ignoring the obvious dangers. So this person gets hit several times but continues to jaywalk and insists that each time that he does it would be different. So this is an effective metaphor for alcoholism. Despite repeated negative outcomes, we tend to, if we're alcoholics, lean into our old habits, and they're hard to resist. So just like the jaywalker in the story, sometimes we take risks, not only with repeatedly picking up a drink, despite that, how's it go? Not bad things don't happen every time I drink, but whenever bad things happen, I'm always drinking. So these bad habits, these character defects, they were, I guess, magnified when I was drinking, but I still have them as a sober alcoholic. So I can still jaywalk emotionally, and that's what I want to talk about today. So what do I mean by emotional jaywalking? Well, it's really when I cross into emotional danger zones without thinking about the consequences, letting my emotions drive me without pausing, like I talk about all the time. So this could come in the form of holding on to resentments. It could come in the form of self-sabotage or even ignoring my own boundaries, which I think it rears its ugly head probably on a daily basis for me. So making risky emotional choices that can hurt us or set us back in recovery. And this really applies in my sobriety, but has now started to really apply in my stroke recovery as well. So I always have called it, I'm a glutton for punishment. That's what I always say. I take on tasks that I know are too much I push myself into uncomfortable situations, and I make life harder for myself. That's just what I do. It's how I roll. And why do I do this? I think it's because there's a lot of reasons. One would be lack of acceptance. I think that's a big one. Lack of acceptance that I cannot or should not do the thing that I keep repeatedly doing. So, for example, when I got sober, I had to make the decision to step away from going to happy hours and some of these things, that parties, hanging out with specific friends that I used to drink with, a lot with. I had to step away from that stuff because it was putting me in uncomfortable situations. So as much as I wanted to hang out with those friends, everything in me wanted to hang out with those friends. If those friends were going to drink, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. It was going to put me in a risky situation, so that maybe if I didn't drink at that time, it would stick in my craw until I would eventually pick up the drink later. Today, what do I do to put myself in uncomfortable situations? Well, I believe I told the story last week of taking a walk with my dog and deciding I'm going to combine multiple vestibular exercises and maybe I can get better twice as fast. So I'm walking my dog and I do too much and I end up being in the position where I literally could not move further. Like I could not walk home. I had to just stand there for about 10 minutes with my dog and try to let my symptoms subside enough that I could get home without falling over, and also not look like an idiot standing on the side of the road. That's my own problem for 10 minutes. So we did a little standing in place dog training for 10 minutes. But another thing, so that's lack of acceptance would be one reason why I may push myself too much. I also, when I was drinking, believed that I deserved the struggle. And I don't think that that's something that I've completely abandoned in sobriety. I feel like I still do it. In the first several months after I left my job last June, I kept doing the things that I wanted to do. I kept doing the things that I felt like I should be able to do, despite the pain that I was feeling. And my emotional response to that was that, okay, this is just how I'm going to have to live now. You know, this is what my struggle is going to look like. I'm going to be in pain for the rest of my life. I'm going to have a headache for the rest of my life. And what I realized somewhere along the way over the past several months is that it doesn't have to be that way. I don't deserve to live in pain. I don't have to live like that. So as much as I don't have to pick up a drink, I don't have to be in emotional pain, I also don't have to live in physical pain. And to me, these are all examples of emotional jaywalking. And I have a great example that one of our listeners gave to me, so I'm going to get into that in a few minutes. But one of the things that we learn in the sobriety program is to stay on our side of the street. That's what we call it. So when we're saying our amends in step 9 to other folks that we have relationships with, we learned in step 4 and 5 to look at our role in the relationship. And steps 8 and 9, we look into that further and understand what is in my control and what is not. And so this I also would compare to jaywalking in a way that through the steps, I'm cleaning my side of the street. That's what we call it. And sometimes in this comparison to jaywalking, we should stay on the sidewalk and not cross into traffic at all. So how do we avoid these emotional jaywalks? So first of all, it is about awareness. I think that is a huge deal. Being aware of seeing the red flags for what is happening in a relationship around me and recognizing what my pattern usually is. What is my character defect? To explode? What is my, do I react but without thinking? Am I stepping off the curb into emotional traffic without pausing and thinking about, is there a safer route? Do I actually even need to cross the street? Is there a bridge that could take me over instead? Or am I just a glutton for punishment? Am I trying to play Frogger and just dodge these emotional situations with people when actually I can probably just go back in my house and just look out the window and watch life happen without me? Sometimes things resolve. I've found this more and more in sobriety. Things will resolve without me having to get involved at all. I've noticed that the less so I'm a talker. I mentioned that the other day when I had my episode with Bailey. And I noticed that as I continue to practice the program, I'm recognizing that when there's a group of people, and I'm in that group of people, and everybody's talking, I always feel so inclined to put my 2 cents in. And I think I mentioned before, quite a few months ago, I had my mom and my mother-in-law over for a tea, and they were talking to each other, and I could tell that I was like antsy to inject my opinion or add to the conversation. But as I was listening to them, I relaxed. I actually felt my body relax a bit, and I realized that this conversation, this meeting between the two, is actually more enlightening for everybody. I think if I just sit back and allow them to talk to each other without me feeling like I have to get involved. And it was so enjoyable to listen to them and not feel like, I always feel like I have to be the host, you know, even if it's not my house. Like, I feel like I am in charge of making sure that everybody's happy and everybody's having fun in life. I'm talking about in life. Like when I went to meetings at work, when somebody went to my office, if I had a one-on-one with an employee, like I always felt like I was the hired entertainment. It's really quite strange, actually. So, anyway, sorry. I paused because I'm recording with my phone and it looks like I had a phone call come in. So I don't know if that's going to mess up the camera or not. That's a good test. We'll find out. So moving on, often there is a crosswalk, I would say, nearby that keeps us from having to jump into traffic. And those crosswalks are support groups, therapy, pausing, practicing self-care. So if you play in the traffic, in the emotional traffic in your relationships, if you decide to step off of the curb into it after much thoughtful pause, are you going to be making the situation better for anyone, or are you just making things worse for yourself, making your recovery life harder? And a lot of this takes that pause. So listen to this story. So one of our listeners, we're going to call her Sarah, reached out to me bravely to talk about an experience where she felt that she was emotionally jaywalking. So, and she had been for most of her life. So her story is an example of learning self-awareness and taking the deliberate steps to work towards healthier emotional habits. So Sarah explained to me, she found herself always making spontaneous decisions based on high emotional impulses without considering long-term implications. And these decisions could be involved with just her life in general or her relationships. So people, places, and things. And so whether it was ending a relationship abruptly, ending a job, starting a new job without adequate preparation, or moving to, what do they call it? They call it relocation, emotional relocation. I don't know. I can't remember what the term is, but when you feel like you're going to fix all your problems by relocating. So Sarah's life was a series of emotional leaps. So emotional jumps into the traffic. It reminds me of Frogger. And although it feels liberating as a young woman without without a significant other, or feeling free to jump from having a significant other to not having a significant other, it's without putting the adequate thought into it that although it's freeing at first, it becomes more of a hangover, like an emotional hangover with regretful consequences. So the turning point for her, in addition to getting sober, was a impulsive decision to leave a stable job. And this led to significant financial and personal stress. So Sarah was able to see that that this was a pattern for her, and it mirrors this idea of emotional jaywalking. So crossing these dangerous roads in her life without waiting and pausing for, the opening, the signal to go. And so she recognized that her need for immediate gratification was there. So Sarah explained to me that she took several steps to change her behaviors. And one is to start therapy. So this is the same thing that I, resorted to recently. Was I needed to address what was going on the inside. And through counseling, we can learn techniques to pause and evaluate our feelings. And this is what Sarah did. And this is what I've been learning with my psychiatrist as well. Another thing that Sarah did was to talk more with her friends and family in the way of having a support group around her, sharing goals with family and friends in order to stay accountable and have a sounding board for big decisions instead of just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, which is, I say that a lot too. I fly by the seat of my pants. And I like it that way. I don't like to be a big planner, but I have to find a happy medium. So I can really relate to that. And then another practical tool that Sarah adopted is the 24-hour rule. So whenever she feels compelled to make a emotional decision, she waits 24 hours before acting on it. And I relate this to my God box, because when I started using the God box and putting these sticky notes, writing somebody's name down if they pissed me off and putting it in the God box, it gave me 24 hours. And once I was able to not react and wait that 24 hours, I was able to think a little better and think, do I need to respond now, or can I wait again? And this pause helps approach decisions with a clearer mind and absolutely leads to more thoughtful outcomes. So Sarah shared with me that these changes did not immediately transform her, but just by being aware of this pattern that she had, it significantly improved her ability to manage her emotions and make decisions that were looking out for her long-term well-being rather than this immediate gratification. And immediate gratification, I think, is very, very well known in the alcoholism world, because that's what I needed when I was feeling stress, even towards the end when I wasn't feeling stressed. But I needed to have that immediate calm down. I needed, I would take one drink, and I could feel everything just kind of relax. And now I find self-care ways of feeling that ease in my stress. And it has taken a lot of practice, but it's absolutely possible. I'm proof of it for sure. So Sarah feels more in control of her life and feels like she's not so much jumping into traffic and then dodging bullets all the time, dodging cars all the time. So I think this was a perfect example to me of emotional jaywalking. And I think taking the time to think things through and proceed with caution and awareness is something that we could really apply to everything in life. So thank you, Sarah, for sharing your emotional growth in sobriety with me. But even though this is Sarah is in the sobriety network that I'm in, these types of behaviors can apply to anybody. You don't have to be a recovering alcoholic. So if you'd like to share your story with me or hear about a topic that resonates with you, just reach out to me over email at rachel@recoverydailypodcast.com or message me on social media, on all your popular social media platforms. I'm always open to learning healthier ways to behave and respond to people, places, and things a little better and not react. I think it's a lifetime journey. It's a lifetime of learning how to do that, I believe, and we can learn from each other. So thank you for listening to the Recovery Daily podcast. And don't forget to like and share this episode with someone who might need it. I will talk to you tomorrow.